Trump is having his own problems, lots of his own problems as usual. Um, I want to start with this. So he's been courting business. Now, Trump's whole thing is he's going to be the good president for the economy and business, and he's got all these weird ideas, but he goes out and he tries to court the CEOs from Fortune 500 companies, and it does not go well. It goes really bad and backfires. And this is a Squawk Box. I forget this guy's name, Jeffrey Sonnenfeld. But yeah, let's just jump into this.
This was written by somebody we know very well. And joining us right now to discuss CEO sentiment on the 2024 election is Jeffrey Sonnenfeld. He's Yale School of Management Senior Associate Dean for Leadership Studies, also a CNBC contributor. His op-ed, which was trending yesterday in the New York Times on Sunday, he says that former President Donald Trump, quote, continues to suffer from the lowest level of corporate support in the history of the Republican Party, and effectively makes the case that CEOs are not for Trump. And so, Jeffrey, we want to talk about this because, you know, I think we hear certain things anecdotally. You say you hear things anecdotally, and I think we're all trying to make some sense of where things really are. So what do you say?
Well, thanks, Andrew, and thank you for kind of blazing the trail in getting the record straight last weekend, coming off of the Business Roundtable meetings where some press wrongly reported it as if the CEOs had gathered there coming to see him. It was the quarterly meeting of the BRT, and President Biden had also been invited but was at the G7 meetings in Italy, but his chief of staff went. And they found it confusing and were certainly no rounds of applause. And your reporting is corroborated from what we've picked up. Myself talking with three specific CEOs who were there. Two of them are rather hostile to Biden. One of them was uncommitted, and they walked away pretty confused about President Trump. We look back into the data, and we're looking at this now for the last 4 months. We've been pointing out that there are no Fortune 500 CEOs who are supporting former President Trump, and that is a historic break going back to William Howard Taft and through Calvin Coolidge and Ronald Reagan and the Bushes and everything.
Yeah, so it's amazing. The Republicans used to be the party of big business, right? The lower regulations, lower corporate taxes, all that stuff. Now they cannot get behind Trump. 7 years ago when he ran, or was it 7.5 years ago when he ran, they were like, yeah, we're semi-optimistic, but they didn't really know what he was going to do. Now they know he's going to go back into a big tariff war with China, which caused inflation to rise, which slowed business. He's talking about funding the U.S. government now with tariffs and getting rid of income tax, which is psychotic, because tariffs would have to be like 85% on the price of goods, which means the price of goods would go up by dramatic. I mean, inflation would be catastrophic. We also know he's probably not going to fund Ukraine in their war with Russia. Ukraine is also one of, if not the biggest producers in the world of wheat, which brings down, cost of not just bread, but anything that's involved with wheat or wheat products. They're a big bread basket in Europe. It'll drive up prices there, and they already has from the war. But if Russia takes over, it'll be even worse, and they will if we don't support them. The problems in the Middle East with Israel right now, they're bad, but yeah, I mean, Biden hasn't done enough, don't get me wrong, but Trump is going to let them run ramshot and just commit genocide, in which case you potentially could have Egypt or Iran or Syria jumping in to try and support the Palestinians, so you could have a war in the Middle East, and things could be really bad. Plus, a lot of the businesses are aware that regulation on climate change has actually been a good thing, because right now climate change is expensive for businesses, extremely expensive. It costs billions of dollars a year for businesses when you have adverse weather patterns that are destroying infrastructure, they're destroying crops, they're making it difficult to ship goods. It causes a huge problem. So they're on board with, we got to do something for climate change, and we prefer the government pay for it than we do. Because right now they're the ones having to float some of the bill for a lot of this. And so if you deregulate it, then you have a bigger issue, right? It's what we call moral hazard, right? If me and my competitors, if it's cheaper for us to pollute well, even if I really don't want to, I kind of have to in order to be competitive with my competitor. But if you make it illegal for both of us to pollute, well then, hey, I'm not going to pollute, because if he pollutes, then they could face getting lawsuits or fines or whatever, or getting shut down. So it's important to have these things. So Trump is really scaring the CEOs. On top of the fact, not just his wonky ideas that don't really make any sense, but also this. And they were talking. This is furthermore about this same meeting that they talked about later on.
Will say I was surprised. I spoke to a number of CEOs who I would say walked into the meeting being Trump supporter-ish or thinking that they might be leaning that direction, who said that he was remarkably meandering, could not keep a straight thought, was all over the map, and that they, which maybe not surprising, but was interesting to me because these were people who I think might have been actually predisposed to him and actually walked out of the room less predisposed to him, actually predisposed to thinking this is not necessarily, as one person said, this may not be any different or better than a Biden thought if you're thinking that way.
So we've got two guys that are old. One, Trump is a little mentally off. He always has been, but now it's starting to seem like he really can't even keep a straight thought. Biden, on the other hand, is just old and slow. The difference is the Republicans are going to stay in lockstep behind Trump. It's just going to be, most of them are, not all of them, but you start to see some breaking up, but most of them are. But it's gotten to the point where it's just incoherent with some of this stuff. And here's one clip. I mean, there's so many we could go over, but here's one recently from a couple weeks ago, just to give you an idea of how crazy this is gotten with Trump.
What would happen if the boat sank from its weight and you're in the boat and you have this tremendously powerful battery and the battery's now underwater and there's a shark that's approximately 10 yards over there? By the way, a lot of shark attacks lately. Do you notice that? A lot of shark. So there's a shark 10 yards away from the boat, 10 yards, or here. Do I get electrocuted? If the boat is sinking, water goes over the battery, the boat is sinking. Do I stay on top of the boat and get electrocuted? Or do I jump over by the shark and not get electrocuted?
Okay, so the people in the background are just, what the fuck? So apparently I think he's trying to talk about electric vehicles. And he's trying to tell a story and saying, okay, there was this guy in South Carolina who said that they want to require electric batteries in all the boats. Which isn't true. There's none of that's going on. Furthermore, you think a billionaire would know this, most yachts have gigantic batteries that run all the electricity of the yacht. So this is not like it's a new thing. Yacht batteries are expensive and huge. I've seen them before. People use them to, like people who build like bombshell bunkers, they'll use them to as electricity to run the bunker. Because a yacht battery is perfect for that. So I don't know what the hell he's talking about. So he's talking about batteries, and then all of a sudden there's sharks, and then the boats can't float because of the battery, because, I don't know, displacement doesn't apply anymore. I mean, we have to go back to third grade fucking science. I mean, it's just insane. But this is what he's been talking about. He's been talking about conversations or weird conversations he thinks he might have had or should have had with Hannibal Lecter, who's a fictional character and a serial killer. He's talking about, well, how great his body is. If he took his shirt off, you'd see how great his body was, but he has lots of scars and wounds. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're just fucking billionaire. You've never worked a day in your life. You don't have scars and wounds. It just reminds me of somebody with Parkinson's, like when my grandfather had Parkinson's. And he'd tell you these stories, and they didn't make a lot of sense, and you didn't know where he was going, and then you realize, oh, he just watched a movie. He's like half remembering the movie he just saw. So it just seems like that with Trump. Like, yeah, clearly he was watching Shark Week, and that's what he came up with. Right? You'll see a lot of scars on my body. Okay, he just watched Rambo. Hannibal Lecter, he just watched Silence of the Lambs. So it's just, when he's gone. So you got two old guys fighting it out for president. What's more important is who are they bringing with them.